Ajahn Jayasaro, monge sénior Theravada, esteve de visita a Portugal para apoiar o projeto do Mosteiro de Budismo Theravada da Floresta, que irá ser iniciado no nosso país. Ajahn Jayasaro nasceu na ilha do Haiti em 1958, mas reside há muitos anos na Tailândia.
Ajahn Jayasaro, thank you for participating in this program for the Portuguese Buddhist Union, and I do hope you have a lovely time in Portugal.
Yes, thank you. I'm enjoying it very much.
Would you please tell us what is the main reason for your visit to Portugal?
Well, one of my closest friends and the monk who ordained as a monk with me in Thailand in 1980, Ajahn Jayasaro, has, as you know, accepted an invitation to begin a monastery here in Portugal. And as I was already planning to come to visit my family at this time of year, I thought I'd like to come and visit and to offer you some encouragement and some support for this project.
Had you before supported other projects in Europe, starting right from the beginning as this one in Portugal?
Yes, I come to Europe every other year, every 2 years. And usually before my lay supporters collect some funds to provide some financial assistance for monasteries and projects in Europe. I've also done the same thing in America when I go there.
It is amazing the level of financial support that this project has received from your lay supporters. And for us in Portugal, well, it's quite a surprise that such support would come from abroad.
In Thailand, my supporters, at least, I think many others, are very interested in and very inspired by the development of Buddhism, and in particular any groups that have an association with the Thai Sangha. They want to express that appreciation and support in whatever way they can.
What does it take to establish a monastery in a country that does not know that tradition? We have never had a Theravada Buddhist monastery in Portugal.
Well, patience, and taking the long view and without too many expectations, and I think just generally as we take on any kind of project as Buddhists, looking on it as a learning experience, and as we were talking this morning, learning from the mistakes that probably be made as well as the successes, and hoping to learn from it as a Buddhist community. And it's just such a wonderful thing, I think, to be involved in something like this right from the very early stages, and something that I think you're all going to be able to look back on with great pride and with much happiness in years to come.
You yourself have lived in the monastery for many years.
I've been living in a monastery since 1978. Yeah.
So that's quite some time.
Yeah.
The monastic lifestyle in Thailand is very much interwoven into the local culture. Is it possible to transplant that tradition to Europe, for example?
Well, I remember when the sort of pioneer Ajahn Sumedho first went to England in the mid-70s. Many people said it's impossible to transfer a tradition that's grown up in the jungles of northeast Thailand into modern Europe or modern Britain. And there were various suggestions: you should adapt this, you should adapt that. Ajahn Chah's advice was try and do everything the way we do it here, and things that really don't work, then we'll think about changing, rather than changing things in advance that may not necessarily need to be changed. And we found there was incredibly how little needed to be adapted, certain extra items of clothing and things, but quite superficial things, but the heart of the tradition been able to maintain very well, I think.
What would you say are then the central characteristics of the Theravada tradition?
Well, the idea is that monks provide a good example, a moral, spiritual example to the lay Buddhists, and proving the truth of the teachings by the way they live. They need to express the teachings. They need to practice what they preach. So if you have a spiritual teacher teaching qualities of restraint, or teaching people to be satisfied with little, or so on, it doesn't have as much impact as when you see monks who are willing to put their whole life on the line and live according to the teachings that they're recommending to others. And so I think that monks do have that kind of integrity and commitment, which can have a transformative effect on the lay Buddhist community, and also as teachers and transmitters of Buddhism. I don't think monks necessarily have to be articulate or charismatic spiritual teachers, but that through the purity of their commitment and their effort to share what they have learning with others, that I think that we have the beginnings of a thriving Buddhist community when you have that interaction and that sharing of responsibilities, where the monks are inspiring and leading the lay Buddhists, and the lay Buddhists are also inspiring the monks through their own practice. Because it works both ways.
It's a two-way relationship there. In terms of,
we're mendicant monks, so we're living on the generosity of the lay Buddhists, and we're constantly aware of that. If you have any kind of honesty or integrity as a monk, you're constantly aware, I'm able to live this life because of the generosity of the lay supporters, and you feel this need to be able to repay that and to live up to that. And when you see the lay supporters, the lay Buddhist community putting every effort they can into their life, into their area of their conduct and their meditation practice, and then you feel uplifted by that, just in the same way that the lay people are uplifted by the monks' practice. And it's just a wonderful feeling of that kind of harmony of the two different Buddhist groups coming together in this way. Yeah.
So to establish a monastery, there are many requisites, such as food and shelter, and there is a first step. How does that happen? Because for many people, that's a mystery.
Well, firstly, because we're not an evangelist tradition. It's not that Ajahn Jayasaro or any of the Buddhist monks say we've really got to go and spread Buddhism in Portugal, but it's a response to a request from a community of lay Buddhists who are already established and who are willing to provide the basic requisites that the monks need to survive physically: a roof over their heads, sufficient clothing, 1 meal a day, and medicines, medical care if they get sick. And so before monks will accept an invitation in a non-Buddhist culture, they have to be really sure that the people who are inviting them are solid and they're in it for the long run. It's not just a passing fashion or some inspiration that may disappear a few years down the road. And so in the case of the group in Portugal, then the Sangha really is confident that that kind of solidity and commitment is there, and are willing to respond to that.
Yeah. So there's a commitment from the lay side, so to speak, for the Sangha to do that step of establishing a new monastery. There has to be on the other side someone that, they're committed to the project as well. And
sure.
From what I understood, nowadays you don't live in a monastery.
I'm living in a hermitage, living by myself. Of course, I still have regular contacts with other monasteries, particularly those of my own tradition, and I attend important ceremonies at those monasteries, and I also act as an advisor to the present abbot of the monastery which I once ran. So I'm a sort of an elder who can always be reached for support and encouragement. So,
do you live mostly contemplative life, or are you involved in other projects as well?
The main emphasis is on contemplation and my own spiritual practice, but not having to run a large monastery, I do have a certain amount of time that I devote to writing projects, and also I have an interest in education, particularly in trying to encourage more Buddhist wisdom, Buddhist, into the education system, particularly the principles of Buddhist developmental psychology, the understanding of what education is, what it could be within a Buddhist context, and something that I feel has been lacking in Thailand, and something which I feel that Buddhism has an awful lot to offer in this area, not only in Thailand but in other countries.
And how do you see Buddhism informing education from a young age? Not so, yes, from a young age.
Well, I think that whereas we can characterize most of the major religions, particularly those great traditions that grew up in the Middle East, we in fact call them the great faiths. We use the word faith and religion more or less interchangeably these days, which indicates that they are, I would say in essence, belief systems. But it's a mistake to consider that all religions are necessarily belief systems, or that people relate to the Buddha the same way that Christians relate to Jesus or Muslims to Allah, for instance. And I would characterize Buddhism as essentially an education system. In fact, the teachings of the Buddha he called the Trisikkhara, or the threefold training, or the threefold education. So the Buddha's teachings provide a training, a development of the whole human being, which leads ultimately to enlightenment. So I would say that's the most comprehensive and effective and successful education system that's ever appeared in the world. So it seems to me that particularly in Buddhist communities, if you can adapt from that, based upon those same principles, but of course recognizing that this is not aimed at leading children to full enlightenment or even to become monks and nuns, but accepting the idea that a training which is mapped upon that fully comprehensive training will provide a holistic education which will meet the needs of children in all areas of their lives, both so physically, morally, spiritually, as well as intellectually.
What kind of emphasis do you bring into your system? What are the various sectors that are emphasized in the process of educating a child?
Well, I've proposed a fourfold structure which is based upon teachings found in the Buddhist discourses. And the four spheres, four areas, are two external and two internal. So the first is the relationship of the child to the material world in which it lives. And so material world, they're starting off from the child's own body and developing a wise relationship to his body, which includes things like eating well, exercising well, and treating his body appropriately. And then expanding from that to the material world directly surrounding the child's relationships to his possessions, the things that she considers to belong to them, their toys, their computers, how they relate to money, how they relate to all those things that they're meeting on a regular basis and can be a cause of suffering or happiness. And then expanding beyond that ultimately to relationship to the environment and the natural world. So we're saying this is the first part of education, a wise relationship to the material world. And that area would include a lot of the conventional academic subjects, the sciences, and most of the subjects in the conventional curriculum would be involved in that particular area.
So just to understand, is it woven into the national curriculum?
It's a Buddhist wisdom school, then there is a certain compulsory subjects which are laid down by the Ministry of Education, but they are interwoven, as you say, and this idea of the relationship between the child and the material world as being like the organizing principle of those subjects, and then supplementing where they seem to be lacking. The second area is the child's relationship to the social world. So the question is how to live most in the best possible way, in the wisest way, with those that surround us, with our families and our communities and the society in which we live in. And we talk about precepts here, and not precepts as commandments from on high, which you're rewarded if you keep to these principles, or you're punished if you're not. But they're looked on as trainings, or as an education of conduct. And objects of mindfulness. This is how we develop mindfulness and awareness in daily life, by being aware of basic ethical standards that, most importantly, we have to take on voluntarily. We have to see the value of them. And so children are taught this kind of understanding of ethics, and encouraged to reflect upon the best way to live in communities in order to create those feelings of safety, trust, stability, warmth, kindness. And then we're also involves an education of how we communicate with each other, wise, effective communication. Also teaching our relationship to our elders, and this is a very strong part of Buddhist culture, respect for our elders, looking after our mentors and those people who've shown love and commitment to our lives. And also a social conscience, and reaching out to others within the society to offer assistance and in whatever way we can.
It really is holistic.
Yeah. Then the third level is the education of the heart. And so we're using the basic Buddhist idea of the wholesome and the unwholesome, or we could say the positive and the negative. So teaching children ways of identifying and ways of protecting their minds against unwholesome or negative qualities, such as anxiety, anger and depression and so on, and teaching ways of children to deal with those things if they have already arisen, how to give rise to positive qualities in their heart, and how to take care of those positive qualities, cherish them and develop them. So we have a teaching with like 12 wise habits, which gives different kind of virtues which children relate to and remember and do various projects on these. So they actually become part of the education. For instance, patience, endurance, and being able to be, it's not just like a byproduct or something. You'd like your child to be someone who's resilient and patient and so on, but actually this is part of your education, that the training in patience, for instance, and contentment and kindness and so on. The fourth area is the area of wisdom development, which starting off with basic thinking skills, creative, critical thinking skills. And then this is teaching of particular Buddhist thinking skills, what we call yoniso manasikara, which are basically of two main kinds, those kinds of thinking, those kinds of reflections which will reduce the power of negative mental qualities and promote positive mental qualities. And then those kinds of reflection which penetrate into the way things are, into the impermanent, unstable nature of existence, for instance.
And that would also be taught at school?
Yes, of course, with all of these teachings, then it's age relative, and of course for small children, some of this is going to be over their heads, so things are pitched at whatever level the children are able to benefit from, and that kind of reflection on the way things are is something for children of a higher age. But at the same time, being a Buddhist culture, so many ideas which might seem kind of Buddhist philosophy to a non-Buddhist or non-Buddhist culture, we come across as quite normal and everyday in that kind. So my teacher's famous for this, teaching it's not sure. It's not sure. So you teach children this all the time, when you're really happy, remind yourself it's not sure, it can change. And when you're really when you're really up, it's not sure, it can change. You hate, you love, you like, you dislike, and you give children examples of, now do you have a friend who maybe last year you didn't like them very much at all and now you're really good friends, or maybe someone who's a good friend now you don't get on with. So just taking examples from everyday life, very simple things to express these principles, because in the end it's not metaphysics or something that's very abstruse, it's just about life. I mean, Buddhism's about life, isn't it, and what we can experience.
So who teaches this? Who teaches with this level of knowledge about Buddhism?
The school teachers, and this is the major challenge, because it is very much dependent on the quality of the teachers, and there's good teaching staff everywhere. There's always a turnover and having to train new people, but getting more people who are, really want to be involved in this kind of project, who are already meditating and have a certain quality of awareness. But I would say after some years now, this is probably the most difficult area, creating or helping to nurture the teachers that have the necessary skills to be able to impart this kind of education.
I'm really curious about how it is to teach these young children. How do they relate to the teachings?
I love it. I particularly like prepubescent children because they're a lot easier to talk to. Adolescents are a real challenge, and I can't claim to be a master of that. I'm learning. I've just started to teach adolescents the last couple of years, and I have quite confident in my ideas about it, but putting them into practice and dealing with individuals, and I feel I'm learning something myself. It's not just I'm giving, but I'm receiving also through this.
So this is quite a contrast. I imagine you living quite a secluded and contemplative life in your kuti, but then once a week there you are surrounded by children.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is the way my life's worked out. It's I'm on the middle way, but my sort of day life's a bit of extreme. I go for extremes, 4 or 5 days a week, or I don't, have a single conversation. And then, sort of full on, or on twice a month when I give his Dhamma teachings, when suddenly there's like 200 people come to see me and to practice meditation and receive teachings and so on. So, but I've been doing it long enough now that it's quite natural to me.
Shift gears quite natural.
Yeah, I do, yeah.
From what you told me, you find technology extremely helpful to keep a connection with the people around you.
Yeah, I do, yeah. So,
and from what you told me, these days technology has been quite helpful to maximize the connection that you have with people.
Yes, because I've always enjoyed, and I find living alone, and I find it very beneficial in my practice. But I do also really need to feel that I'm contributing something tangible to the society in which I live in, to give back for all. I've been living in Thailand for 34 years now, and I have such a great love and affection for the country, and that I really do want to feel that I'm helping to make it a better place. And formerly we always felt like technology and modern developments are something which detract from the life and a real danger to traditional monastic life. And personally I found quite the opposite, that I can sit down and well, if I give a talk on a Sunday, then it's recorded and CDs are made which are played on the radio. People make video recordings that go on the internet, onto television, and so I'm just doing what I would do anyway, but through technology it reaches people all over the country. So
Ajahn Jayasaro, thank you very much for this, the time you spent with us, and thank you for your insights, and I really hope all your efforts in education and making Thailand a better country, may they always succeed.
Thank you very much, and I'm really enjoying my visit, and I hope to have the opportunity to come again and to give continued support to your project.